Every single morning, your brain performs one of the most complex biological feats in all of nature. It wakes up. When you transition from deep, dreamless sleep into consciousness, your brain does not just flip a switch. It climbs a ladder of electrical frequencies. You begin in delta waves, the slow, deep oscillations of restorative sleep. As consciousness nears, your brain enters theta waves, oscillating between 4 and 8 Hz. This is the hypnagogic state, the dreamy, twilight zone of human consciousness. Finally, as your eyes open, your brain begins to generate alpha waves, vibrating between 8 and 12 Hz, representing a state of relaxed but alert awareness. This transitional window, lasting roughly 20 to 30 minutes after you wake up, is what neuroscientists call a state of high cortical suggestibility. During this brief period, your rational executive center, the prefrontal cortex located right behind your forehead, is still in a low-power, booting-up phase. However, your limbic system, particularly your amygdala, the emotional sentinel of the brain, is already fully online. This creates a unique psychological vulnerability. Because your prefrontal cortex is offline, your critical filters are down. Your subconscious mind is completely exposed, highly programmable, and deeply suggestible to whatever emotional data you feed it. Cellular biology research at Stanford University, alongside neuroimaging studies at the University of Southern California, confirms that the inputs you receive during this alpha-theta transition act as a software installation for your nervous system. If the very first thing you do upon waking is grab your smartphone, you are immediately flooding your highly suggestible brain with cortisol, adrenaline, and stress signals. You scroll through emails, read alarming news headlines, or look at social media. In doing so, you are telling your waking limbic system that the world is an unsafe place. You are programming your brain to spend the next 16 hours in a state of chronic defense, anxiety, and hypervigilance. But what if you consciously choose to run a different program? What if, before you touch your phone, you speak 2 simple words, "Thank you"? This is not a matter of spiritual optimism. It is a targeted, self-directed neuroplastic intervention. By consciously introducing the feeling of appreciation into this highly suggestible state, you are taking control of your cognitive operating system. You are manually configuring the neural networks that will process every conversation, every stressor, and every decision you make for the rest of your day. The Cortisol Awakening Response and the biological routing slip. To truly understand how morning thoughts shape your physical health, we must examine a highly specific hormonal event called the Cortisol Awakening Response, or CAR. In the first 30 to 45 minutes after your eyes open, your body undergoes a natural, dramatic hormone surge. Your adrenal glands release a massive spike of cortisol, typically raising your levels by 50 to 75%. Clinical researchers at the University of Westminster and the Technical University of Dresden have studied this phenomenon extensively. In mainstream media, cortisol is often villainized as the stress hormone. But in the context of waking up, the cortisol awakening response is actually a beautiful evolutionary design. It is your body's natural engine startup. This sudden rise in cortisol primes your hippocampus for memory consolidation, sharpens your spatial awareness, and mobilizes glucose, so you have the physical energy to face the day. However, the content of your thoughts during the first minutes of waking acts as a biological routing slip for this cortisol surge. If your initial thoughts are anxious, ruminative, or focused on what is wrong in your life, your amygdala hijacked that cortisol surge. Your brain interprets the cortisol as a warning signal that a threat is imminent. In response, your amygdala uses that hormone spike to reinforce its neural pathways of fear, lock your heart rate into a sympathetic state, and activate your hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, leaving you in a state of low-grade chronic stress. But when you consciously direct your mind toward gratitude, even for simple things like the warmth of your bed, the air in your lungs, or the coffee brewing in the kitchen, you change the biological reception of that hormone. By coupling the cortisol awakening spike with the cognitive appraisal of safety and appreciation, your brain channels that hormonal energy into the prefrontal cortex. Instead of fueling anxiety, the cortisol becomes high-octane fuel for cognitive flexibility, focused executive attention, and emotional stability. You are effectively telling your body's master endocrine systems, We are awake, we have high energy, and we are completely safe. The Reticular Activating System and your mind's search engine. How does your brain decide what to pay attention to in a world overflowing with information? It relies on a dense network of nuclei located within the brainstem called the Reticular Activating System, or RAS. Your reticular activating system is the ultimate gatekeeper of your conscious experience. Every single second, your sensory organs are bombarded with roughly 2 billion bits of raw data. If your brain tried to process all of this, you would go into immediate neurological shock. To prevent this, the RAS acts as a sophisticated, personalized search algorithm. It filters out 99% of environmental stimuli, allowing only the information that it deems vital to your survival or your primary focus to reach your conscious mind. The RAS operates under a simple set of instructions. It highlights whatever you consciously focus on. If you wake up with a mindset of scarcity and irritation, your RAS receives a command to search for evidence that validates your misery. It will actively highlight the slow driver in front of you, the rude email from a coworker, or the messy sink in your kitchen, while completely filtering out the beautiful morning light, the stranger who held the door open for you, or the physical health of your family. By practicing morning gratitude, you are manually reprogramming your brain's search criteria. When you wake up and actively look for things to appreciate, you tell your reticular activating system that signals of safety, opportunity, and beauty are highly valuable to your survival. Your RAS immediately updates its filter. Throughout the day, it begins to flag resources, glimmers of joy, and constructive opportunities that would have otherwise been completely invisible to you. You do not change the physical world around you, you change the neurobiological lens through which your brain reconstructs that world. Overriding 600 million years of negativity bias. This retraining is essential because you are fighting against a deeply ingrained evolutionary defense system known as the negativity bias. Over 600 million years of evolutionary history, stretching from the simplest marine organisms to modern humans, survival has always prioritized the detection of danger over the appreciation of safety. To our ancestors, living in hostile environments, overlooking a single threat, like a predator in the bushes, meant immediate death. Overlooking a positive experience, like a warm patch of sunlight or a sweet berry, was unfortunate but not fatal. As a result, natural selection favored the paranoid brain. The human amygdala evolved to react faster, more intensely, and with greater electrical power to negative stimuli than to positive ones. Neuroscientist Rick Hansen, a leading authority on neuroplasticity and the negativity bias, describes this phenomenon with a powerful analogy. Your brain is like Velcro for negative experiences, but like Teflon for positive ones. When you experience a negative event such as a critical comment, a financial worry, or a mistake at work, your amygdala processes it instantly, logging it into your long-term memory in a fraction of a second. However, when you experience a positive event, a moment of peace, a compliment, or a beautiful sunset, your brain does not store it automatically. Hansen's research reveals that a positive experience must be held in your active working memory for at least 12 to 20 seconds of sustained, conscious attention just to pass through the neural filters and get encoded into your physical brain tissue. If you do not manually intervene, your brain will naturally slide into chronic worry, threat scanning, and pessimism. It is simply running its ancient, default survival code. Gratitude is the direct, conscious override of this evolutionary bias. When you wake up and deliberately hold a feeling of appreciation in your mind for 20 seconds, you are forcing your brain to keep a positive circuit firing. You are giving your neurons the time they need to build physical, structural pathways of optimism. You are training your nervous system to move away from a default state of survival and toward a default state of thriving. The neurochemical symphony of gratitude. When you practice genuine gratitude, you are triggering a profound neurochemical cascade. Your brain manufactures a precise cocktail of 4 key neurotransmitters and hormones that work in perfect harmony to restore balance to your nervous system. First, gratitude triggers a targeted release of dopamine, the neurochemical of reward, anticipation, and motivation. When you express appreciation, your brain activates the ventral tegmental area, and the nucleus accompanies the core engines of your mesolimbic reward pathway. This dopamine release creates a feeling of intrinsic satisfaction. Because dopamine is designed to reinforce behaviors that keep us alive, it establishes a powerful positive feedback loop. The more you practice gratitude, the more your brain seeks out opportunities to feel grateful, turning appreciation from a conscious effort into an automatic habit. Second, gratitude boosts your brain's production of serotonin, nature's master mood stabilizer. Recalling grateful memories activates the perigenual anterior cingulate cortex, signaling the raphe nuclei in your brainstem to produce and distribute serotonin. This increases feelings of contentment, emotional resilience, and deep safety. It silences the ruminative, self-critical chatter of the mind, acting as a natural, non-pharmacological antidepressant. Third, when your gratitude is focused on a relationship, a community, or an act of kindness, your hypothalamus releases oxytocin. Oxytocin is the hormone of trust, empathy, and social bonding. It calms the hyperactive threat scanning of your amygdala, lowers your blood pressure, and activates your vagus nerve, signaling your entire body to enter a state of deep parasympathetic relaxation. Fourth, consistent gratitude practice dramatically lowers your baseline levels of cortisol. Dr. Robert Emmons of the University of California, Davis, discovered that individuals who maintained a simple, daily gratitude practice experienced a 23% reduction in salivary cortisol compared to control groups. By keeping cortisol levels low, you protect your hippocampus from neurotoxic damage, boost your immune system's defense mechanisms, and allow your prefrontal cortex to maintain sharp executive focus throughout the day. Mapping the grateful brain, fMRI, and structural neuroimaging. The changes that occur in a grateful brain are not merely chemical, they are structural and visible on modern brain scans. In a landmark functional magnetic resonance imaging study published in the journal Frontiers in Psychology, researchers at the University of Southern California measured brain activation in participants experiencing varying intensities of gratitude. The fMRI data revealed that the intensity of felt gratitude correlated directly with blood oxygen level dependent, or BOLD, signals in the medial prefrontal cortex, specifically the frontal pole and the perigenual anterior cingulate cortex. The correlation was remarkably strong, establishing the medial prefrontal cortex as the primary neurological hub of gratitude processing. This region is one of the most highly connected areas in the entire human brain. It acts as a master fader for your nervous system, communicating directly with the amygdala to regulate emotional intensity, the ventral striatum to govern reward, the anterior cingulate cortex to manage attention, and the insula to track your internal bodily states. Furthermore, a study published in Frontiers in Human Neuroscience by researchers Joshua Brown and Joel Wong at Indiana University demonstrated the power of a brief gratitude intervention. They took individuals struggling with severe clinical anxiety and depression and divided them into groups. One group was asked to perform a simple task: write a letter of gratitude to another person once a week for just 3 weeks. 3 months after the writing exercise had completely ended, all participants were put into an fMRI scanner. Even though they had stopped writing letters weeks prior, the gratitude group showed significantly greater activation in the medial prefrontal cortex when experiencing gratitude compared to the control group. The brief 3-week practice had left a lasting physical signature on their neural tissue, structurally reorganizing how their brains evaluated positive experiences months down the line. Structural neuroimaging has shown that maintaining a gratitude practice for 3 months leads to a measurable increase in gray matter density in the prefrontal cortex. Just as lifting weights physically hypertrophies a muscle, consistently directing your focus toward appreciation physically thickens the brain tissue responsible for emotional regulation, goal-directed behavior, and executive control. The 8 morning mindsets and their neural blueprints. To harness this incredible neuroplastic potential, we can use the 8 morning mantras synthesized by author and mindset expert Mel Robbins. These 8 statements are not mere positive thinking. They are targeted cognitive blueprints designed to activate specific neural networks during your highly suggestible morning alpha-theta transition. Let's break down the precise neuroscience of these 8 morning scripts. Mantra number 1. Today is going to be a great day. When you speak this phrase, You are setting the filter of your reticular activating system. You are giving your medial prefrontal cortex a top-down instruction to scan the day's upcoming sensory information for positive outcomes, allowing you to bypass your default threat scanning bias. Mantra number 2. Something cool is going to happen for me today. This script establishes a state of reward anticipation. By anticipating a positive experience, your brain releases a baseline pulse of dopamine from your ventral tegmental area, increasing your physical energy, curiosity, and cognitive drive before you even step out of bed. Mantra number 3. No matter what happens today, I can handle it. This statement directly builds self-efficacy. It strengthens the functional connection between your prefrontal control networks and your amygdala. When a stressor inevitably occurs later in the day, your prefrontal cortex is already primed to send rapid inhibitory signals to your amygdala, stopping stress in its tracks. Mantra number 4. An exciting new chapter in my life is starting today. This script promotes cognitive flexibility and synaptogenesis. By framing your life as an evolving, exciting narrative, you move your brain away from rigid, fear-based thought loops and open up new, creative problem-solving pathways. Mantra number 5. I need to give myself more credit for how hard I'm trying. This is a direct intervention against your default mode network, or DMN. The DMN is the network that becomes active when we are daydreaming, ruminating, or engaging in harsh self-criticism. By practicing conscious self-compassion, you quiet the overactive hubs of self-judgment, lowering your systemic stress. Mantra number 6. I'm allowed to be a work in progress. This mantra downregulates the error monitoring signals in your anterior cingulate cortex. By releasing the pressure of perfectionism, you lower the emotional high-beta electrical activity in your brain, preventing chronic mental fatigue. Mantra number 7. If I keep showing up, life will reward me. This script encodes psychological stamina. By rewarding your effort rather than a specific, immediate outcome, you build up steady dopamine reserves in your striatum, protecting you from burnout and the urge to quit. Mantra number 8. I have an important contribution to make to the world. This script activates your prospective social cognition network, validating your sense of meaning and purpose. Clinical research has shown that individuals with a strong sense of purpose have lower levels of systemic inflammatory markers, a stronger immune response, and a significantly lower risk of cardiovascular events. Toxic gratitude and the danger of emotional bypassing. As powerful as gratitude is, it is a double-edged sword. In clinical psychology, we must draw a hard, scientific line between genuine, restorative gratitude and the dangerous phenomenon known as toxic gratitude. Toxic gratitude occurs when you use performative thankfulness as a psychological shield to suppress, bypass, or deny real emotional pain, trauma, or toxic life situations. It is the act of forcing yourself to say, I must be grateful for what I have, to avoid facing a deteriorating relationship, workplace abuse, or severe depression. From a neurobiological perspective, forcing a superficial positive narrative over an active state of distress is incredibly damaging. Your amygdala is firing rapidly, screaming that your safety or boundaries are being violated. If your prefrontal cortex tries to force an insincere, positive script to suppress this warning, it creates a state of intense cognitive dissonance. This causes a functional decoupling between your prefrontal cortex and your limbic system. Your amygdala continues to fire unchecked, keeping your sympathetic nervous system locked in a high cortisol state, while your prefrontal cortex suffers from cognitive depletion. True mental health is not about toxic positivity. It is about psychological maturation, the capacity of your brain to hold space for multiple, complex truths simultaneously. A resilient brain does not say, everything is perfect, so I shouldn't complain. Instead, it is capable of holding duality. It says, I am currently experiencing profound grief, anger, and pain because of this setback, and, at the exact same time, I can deeply appreciate the friend who is sitting with me in this pain, and the safety of the room I am in. By validating your negative emotions rather than suppressing them, you allow your amygdala to complete its natural emotional cycle and cool down. Gratitude is not a tool to paint over your struggles. It is a tool to expand your brain's capacity so that pain is not the only truth your nervous system is forced to hold. Recalibrating a hijacked reward system. This ability of gratitude to restore balance to the brain's networks has profound implications for clinical recovery, particularly in the treatment of addiction and trauma. In a brain struggling with substance use or behavioral addiction, the default reward circuitry has been systematically hijacked. Chronic exposure to high-intensity dopamine triggers like drugs, alcohol, gambling, or digital validation forces the nucleus accumbens to downregulate its dopamine receptors. Over time, this downregulation causes a profound state of anhedonia. The brain loses its physical capacity to feel joy, satisfaction, or reward from normal, everyday experiences. The entire system is locked into a pattern of craving, seeking relief only through the source of the addiction. Clinical data, shared by the American Brain Foundation, reveals that consistent gratitude practice plays a powerful role in reversing this hijacking. By forcing your prefrontal cortex to intentionally focus on and appreciate small, low-intensity, real-world experiences like a warm cup of tea, the breeze on your face, or a brief moment of connection, you initiate a top-down neurochemical recalibration. This consistent, gentle activation of the ventral tegmental area releases dopamine at natural, physiological levels. Over weeks of practice, this top-down signaling encourages your reward centers to rebuild and upregulate their dopamine receptors. Gratitude acts as a direct, competing response to the rumination, loneliness, and stress that typically trigger a relapse. It systematically retrains your nervous system to recognize that reward, safety, and relief do not have to come from an external substance or destructive behavior. They can be manufactured internally by your own biology. Clinical-grade protocols for daily practice. To move these neuroscientific insights from theory into concrete reality, you must approach gratitude not as a fleeting feeling, but as a deliberate form of physical brain training. Here are 3 clinical-grade protocols designed to maximize neuroplastic rewiring in your daily life. Protocol number 1, mental subtraction, also known as the counterfactual hack. Rather than writing down a generic, repetitive list of things you have, use the power of counterfactual reasoning. The step-by-step. Choose one vital asset in your life, a loved one, your home, your job, or even the physical use of your limbs. Spend 3 minutes vividly imagining your life if that asset were suddenly stripped away. Imagine the silence of the house without your partner, or the struggle of navigating your day with an injured hand. Once you have allowed your brain to sit with that imagined loss, return your attention to the present moment. The neuroscience. Research from the University of Virginia reveals that imagining the absence of a positive element immediately breaks through your brain's hedonic adaptation, the natural habit of taking good things for granted. By realizing how close you are to losing what you love, you trigger a massive top-down release of dopamine and intense medial prefrontal cortex activation, immediately refreshing your baseline appreciation. Protocol number 2, the specific written journal. If you choose to write down your gratitude, you must optimize your parameters. The step-by-step. Do not type your entries on a digital device. Use a physical pen and paper. Pick just 1 or 2 specific moments from your day, not broad concepts. Write down the precise details of that moment, the exact words someone said, the temperature of the air, the physical sensation in your body. The rule: keep your written entry strictly between 50 and 150 words. Spend 3 to 5 minutes focusing on the entry, keeping it in your working memory. The neuroscience. The motor, sensory act of handwriting engages neural pathways associated with dual processing and memory consolidation far more deeply than typing. Keeping the entry above 50 words ensures you include enough specific detail to activate your brain's moral valuation and empathy networks. Keeping it below 150 words prevents cognitive fatigue, ensuring the practice remains rewarding rather than feeling like a chore. Protocol number 3, the genus safety anchor. To build an emotional shield against acute daytime stress, leverage the suggestibility of your morning state to build a physical anchor. The step-by-step. In the morning, while you are sitting in a state of deep, genuine gratitude, take a small physical object, like a smooth stone, a specific piece of jewelry, or a small piece of paper. As you hold that object, vividly recall your feeling of safety and appreciation. If using paper, write a single letter like the letter S for safety on it. Fold it and put it in your pocket. The neuroscience. Based on psychiatric research, this practice acts as a post-hypnotic behavioral safety suggestion. When you face an acute, unexpected stressor during your day, simply touching or looking at your physical safety anchor immediately re-triggers the neural safety networks you established during your morning suggestible state. It sends rapid, inhibitory signals from your prefrontal cortex directly to your amygdala, lowering your heart rate, reducing cortisol release, and restoring emotional equilibrium in seconds. Your brain is a highly plastic, incredibly adaptive organ. It is continuously restructuring itself based on what you practice most. If you spend your mornings in a state of worry, hurry, and threat scanning, you will build a brain that is world-class at being stressed. But if you take just 10 minutes every morning to practice structured appreciation, you will build a brain that is structurally wired for resilience, clarity, and thriving. The software you run in the morning becomes your biology for the day. Choose to write a masterpiece.